This happened just a few weeks ago. I'm 35 now, and I thought going back to the cabin would help me find some closure. My father died last year, and the cabin was our family's special place. I remembered the good times, but now it felt like stepping into a shadow. I was nervous, but I hoped the place could offer me some comfort. On my first night, I settled in and tried to relax. It was quiet outside, just the sounds of nature. But then I heard it, a tapping against the windows. At first I thought it was branches or the wind. I just wanted to sleep. My heart raced, and I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature. I waited for the sound to stop. It didn't. I told myself it was nothing. The next day, I tried to distract myself. I dug through some old boxes. I found family photos from happier times. But when I looked closely, I noticed something strange. Some faces were blurred. Others looked different, almost wrong. I was confused, but maybe I was just imagining things. It had been a long time. As I cleaned the cabin, I noticed other odd things. The furniture seemed to shift slightly when I left the room. My old toys were missing, the ones I loved as a kid. I convinced myself I just forgot where I'd put them. But then I stumbled upon my father's journals. They were tucked away in a dusty corner, and I felt a knot in my stomach as I opened them. He wrote about strange things happening at the cabin, whispers in the woods. I felt the hair on my neck stand up. Was he talking about the same whispers I'd heard? I didn't know what was real anymore. The tapping grew louder, and an unsettling heaviness settled in the air. One night I decided I had to confront the sound. I stood by the window staring into the blackness outside. I wanted to laugh it off, but I couldn't. I heard it again, a steady rhythm. It felt deliberate, like someone was trying to get my attention. Cold sweat trickled down my back. Then everything changed. I found the old swing my father had made for me. It was gently swaying despite the stillness of the night. I stood frozen, watching it. My breath caught in my throat. Something felt off. Maybe I should have left then. Maybe I stirred something that had been sleeping for years. A few moments later, everything went quiet. Too quiet. For the first time, I understood the cabin wasn't just a house. It felt alive. I glanced around, my heart racing. I was overwhelmed. The faint tapping resumed, drawing closer. I didn't want to look out any longer. I turned my back to the window, feeling panic rise. What was it that I had awakened? I didn't have the answers, and I wondered if this place would ever let me go. The shadows seemed to stretch forever. I felt trapped in a memory that wasn't mine. I shut my eyes and wished I could escape. But I knew the cabin had other plans. I didn't sleep well that night. The tapping was relentless, echoing in my mind. I felt drained the next morning. I made myself coffee, hoping it would help shake off the unease. As the bitter aroma filled the small space, I decided I couldn't hide from this place any longer. I needed to find out what was going on. I grabbed my father's journals and flipped through the pages again. I focused on the entries about the whispers. One in particular caught my eye. He mentioned something about a shadowy figure that appeared when the tapping got too loud. I drew in a shaky breath. That felt too close to home. If he saw something, I needed to find out what it was. With a growing sense of dread, I ventured outside. The sky was gray, the air heavy with humidity. I walked towards the woods behind the cabin. The trees loomed overhead, casting long shadows that danced eerily. Each step felt like an echo against the silence. I tried to push down the fear. After all, my father had faced it too. If he could confront his fears, why couldn't I? I reached a clearing where I used to play as a child. It looked much smaller than I remembered. I scanned the area, half expecting to see the swing set, but it was gone. Instead, I noticed an old tree stump that hadn't been there before. Something about it drew me in. I approached it, brushing away the leaves. The moment my fingers brushed the surface, I gasped. A small, weathered box lay hidden beneath the stump. It seemed almost intentionally buried. My heart raced. What was inside? I hesitated, thoughts of the tapping sound swirling in my mind. My fingers trembled as I pried it open. Inside were drawings, scribbled images of a figure that looked hauntingly familiar. It resembled a shadow, just like what my father described. Then I saw a name scrawled beneath the last drawing. It sent chills through my spine. Elias. I felt a wave of nausea wash over me. That name didn't belong here. I remembered my father speaking of a cousin Elias in whispers, tales cloaked in secrecy. That connection ignited a flicker of dread through me. Sudden movement snapped me out of my thoughts. A rustling in the bushes made me jump. My heart pounded in my chest. I turned quickly, scanning the woods, but there was nothing there. Just the suffocating silence. I felt exposed, like I had crossed some invisible barrier. I had to leave the clearing, but my legs felt heavy. The tapping had returned, louder now, but it wasn't coming from the cabin. It was all around me. I stumbled back towards the cabin, panic gripping me. What had I uncovered? As I reached the door and turned the knob, I felt it shift underneath my hand. I hesitated. Something inside the cabin waited, and I knew I had to confront it. I took a deep breath and stepped inside. The cabin felt different. The familiar scent of musty wood and old books was overshadowed by a chilling presence. I closed the door behind me, but the sound felt muffled, like the walls were swallowing it. As I moved further into the room, the air thickened with an almost palpable tension. I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. The old wooden floor creaked under my weight, each step echoing through the silence. I remembered my father often working late in the evenings, jotting down his thoughts on whatever revelations came from those journals. His passion had consumed him. But now it felt sinister, the way shadows loomed in the corners. I made my way to the table, where the journals lay open, pages fluttering slightly as if a breeze had swept through. But the windows were closed. I knelt down, trying to decipher the last entry my father wrote. The familiar handwriting was shaky, filled with erratic thoughts. The tapping noise had grown louder, he wrote, and it was no longer just tapping. It had become a rhythmic beating, like a heart trying to escape its chest. At the bottom of the page there was a note about a storm that had come through years ago, a storm that had uprooted a tree near the clearing. The tree was once home to a peculiar carving he had discovered. "Find it," he wrote. "It will reveal the truth." My heart raced. What truth, and why was it so important? As I set the journal down, the tapping noise surged again, this time unmistakably coming from the direction of the basement door. My stomach knotted with anxiety. I didn't want to go down there. Something within me screamed to stay away. But curiosity pushed me forward. If I wanted to understand, I needed to confront whatever was below. I approached the door, my hand shaking as I grasped the cold knob. With a deep breath I turned it, and it creaked open, revealing the dark staircase leading down. The moment I stepped down, a shiver traced its way up my spine. The smell of damp earth hit me like a wall. I fumbled for the light switch, finally flicking it on. A single bulb flickered above, casting weak shadows around the room. Old boxes lined the walls, forgotten relics of memories my family had left behind. But it was what lay in the center that stole my breath. A large, covered object sat beneath a faded tarp. I couldn't tell what it was, but the tapping grew louder, more insistent as I approached. Then everything shifted. With a sudden jolt, the tarp fell away as if ripped by an unseen hand. I stumbled back, my heart racing. What I saw sent a freezing jolt of terror through me. A polished wooden chest, ornately carved, identical to the sketches in my father's journal. I could barely move, torn between the need to flee and the overwhelming urge to understand. I took a hesitant step forward. Before I could reach out, an icy gust swept through the basement, extinguishing the light. The darkness enveloped me, and I felt a presence, something watching, waiting. It spoke. "Elias wants to be found." My breath caught in my throat. I knew I had to uncover the truth, but as the shadows stretched menacingly around me, I understood that doing so might cost me everything. I could barely catch my breath in the thick darkness. The voice lingered in my mind, echoing off the damp walls like a cruel taunt. Elias wants to be found. Who was Elias? And why did I feel like I was on the verge of something terrible? I fumbled in the dark for the light switch, heart pounding, but my trembling fingers found nothing but cold concrete. The sound of my own breathing filled the silence, ragged and loud. I huddled against the wall, trying to gather my thoughts. There had to be a reason I was here, but fear tangled my mind. Then I heard it again, the tapping. It wasn't just a noise, it was a desperate plea, rising and falling like a song. I couldn't ignore it. The old chest beckoned me, and some part of me knew that whatever lay inside held the key to my father's madness, and maybe my own survival. I reached distantly for the chest, my fingers brushing against the cool wood. Just as I steadied myself to open it, the bulb flickered back to life, illuminating the basement with an artificial glow. My pulse quickened as I saw what I was up against. The chest was adorned with carvings resembling the tree my father mentioned in the journal. I studied them, trying to unravel their meaning amidst the chaos in my head. There, interwoven, was a depiction of a figure. A man kneeling, hands outstretched toward an ominous shadow. That's when I saw it. A shimmering line emerging from the chest's lip, a brightness that defied the terror surrounding me. I stifled a gasp. In that light, I swear the chest began to vibrate, almost humming, as if alive. That was when I noticed the air around me shift. It turned colder inside the basement. The shadows morphed, stretching toward me like fingers grasping for my attention. And the tapping voice grew frantic, urging me. Find him. You must find him. Nausea twisted my stomach. I needed to make a decision. Did I dare break the chest seal? Instinct screamed at me to turn back, but I couldn't shake the feeling that if I walked away now, I'd be turning my back on everything. I closed my eyes, steadied my breath, and reached for the latch. As I pulled it open, a gust of icy wind tore through the basement, leaving me breathless. The chest erupted in a blinding light, a searing flare of brilliance that swallowed everything around me. I barely had time to shield my eyes before the world tilted and spun. When I opened my eyes again, I found myself not in the basement but standing in a dense forest, the air heavy with a scent I couldn't place. My heart raced. The tapping had stopped, but a sense of urgency clawed at me. Somewhere close by, the sound of leaves crackling underfoot echoed in the stillness. I turned slowly, fear pooling in my gut. Then I saw him, a figure moving just beyond the trees, a shadow against the fading light. It felt impossible, yet the unmistakable resonance of familiarity wrapped around me. Elias? A branch snapped to my right and I whipped around. Whatever I was losing control of was now at hand. I couldn't run. I had to face him. But as I pressed forward, a realization washed over me. I wasn't just chasing a ghost. The search for truth was drawing me deeper into the very heart of this unsettling reality. What had I uncovered, and where would it lead? For a moment, everything hung in the balance. Then I took a step into the trees, and the darkness closed in once more. The trees loomed tall and twisted, their branches clawing at the fading sky like skeletal fingers. I felt small among them, the pit of my stomach sinking with every step. Elias had to be close. The familiar feeling of dread wrapped itself around me like a shroud, whispering doubts in my ear. Why am I here? I muttered into the creeping twilight, hoping the woods would share their secrets. But the forest remained hushed, as if holding its breath in anticipation. The figure moved again, darting between the trees. I strained to catch a glimpse, but it was elusive, slipping away like a restless memory. Elias! I called louder this time. My voice echoed off the trunks, swallowed by the darkness. I cursed under my breath, knowing fear shouldn't hold me back. I pushed forward, branches snagging my clothes, tearing at my skin. The tapping noise returned, now more distinct, like a heartbeat drumming in my ears. It pulled me deeper into the woods. I had the irrational fear that something was waiting for me, but I couldn't stop. Then I stumbled into a clearing, breathless and shaken. In the center stood a massive oak tree, its gnarled roots twisting up like serpents. The bark was riddled with symbols, the same ones I'd seen on the chest. My heart skipped. This tree was the heart of it all. I walked toward it, mesmerized. As I reached out to touch the rough bark, a spark shot through my fingertips, and a wave of warmth washed over me. That was the moment I sensed the shift around me. Shadows flickered at the edge of the clearing, and the temperature dipped again. I spun around, and there he was. Elias, or what I thought was Elias. His figure was draped in shadows, his features obscured. "You shouldn't have come," he said, his voice a low rasp that chilled me to the bone. "Why are you here? What is this place?" I struggled to keep my voice steady. "No one leaves once they find the tree," he replied, his tone almost sorrowful. "You need to turn back." My mind reeled. You're not here to help me?" My breath quickened. "You're trapped?" "No," he shook his head. "But I can't let you fall into the same fate." The urgency in his tone drove an ache in my chest. Before I could press him for answers, a low growl echoed from the shadows. Panic gripped me as I turned to see the origin of the sound. From the darkness emerged a creature, a grotesque mix of man and beast, its eyes glowing with an unholy fire. It prowled into the light, muscles rippling beneath its matted fur. My heart thudded in my chest. "Run!" Elias shouted, but I was frozen in place. The creature's gaze locked onto me, hunger evident in its eyes. I had stumbled into a nightmare, and now I was caught in its thrall. I couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning, and I feared I was running out of time. The beast lunged, a blur of fur and fury. I barely registered Elias's shout before instinct kicked in. I turned and sprinted back toward the trees, branches slashing at my arms. I could hear the creature behind me, heavy breaths punctuating the air as its claws dug into the ground. "Elias!" I yelled, hoping he would follow, but all I heard was the beat of my own heart. I could feel the darkness wrapping around me, each step feeling slower as the adrenaline surged through my veins. I burst into the thick trees, dodging left and right, desperate to escape the predator that hunted me. The underbrush scratched at my legs, leaving a trail of pain as I stumbled deeper into the woods. Fleeting memories of family camping trips surfaced, images of laughter and warmth, now replaced by dread and panic. I had no idea where I was going. The trees stood like sentinels, blocking out the last remnants of light. My breath came in ragged gasps as I tried to focus on putting one foot in front of the other. But the growls echoed around me, and I knew I didn't have much time. Suddenly I tripped over a root and fell hard onto the damp ground. I scrambled to my feet, but I felt it. The creature was closer now, its hot breath on my neck. I could hear its claws scraping against the earth, the sound reverberating like a countdown in my mind. Just as I thought I would be caught, I spotted an old shed peeking through the dark trees. The door hung slightly ajar, creaking ominously. My instincts screamed at me to run, but I sprinted toward it. With no time to think, I pushed the door wide and threw myself inside. The interior was musty and dim, the faint smell of decay hanging in the air. I crouched behind a stack of old wooden crates, my heart racing as I listened for the beast. Through the cracks in the barn wood, I could see shadows shifting outside. For a moment, all was still. I clutched my knees, fighting the urge to make noise. Then I heard it, rustling sounds as the creature prowled near, sniffing the air like a bloodhound. I held my breath, willing my pounding heart to quiet down. But just when I thought I might be safe, a sound shattered the silence. A low, mournful howl echoed through the woods, causing a shiver to run down my spine. The creature paused, and I felt the tension in the air shift. That howl wasn't just a random noise. Something was calling it away. I kept my eyes locked on the door, half expecting it to burst open at any moment. The oppressive darkness seemed to thicken around me. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I noticed something on one of the crates. A shimmering object caught the faint light. A pendant, the same symbol from the tree's bark etched in silver. I hesitated, but something compelled me to reach for it, urging me to understand its significance. As my fingers grazed its cool surface, I heard a thud outside, and everything went dark. The urge to flee hit me anew, but my body felt heavy, paralyzed by something I couldn't comprehend. In the pitch blackness, the fear clawed at me. What had I unleashed? What waited for me beyond the door? Before I could process what was happening, I heard the sound of footsteps approaching, wickedly slow. I strained my ears, each footstep echoing like a drumbeat in my chest. It was a steady rhythm, drawing nearer, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. The air grew heavier, thick with dread. I couldn't move. The coldness of the pendant in my hand seemed to pulse, as if it were somehow alive. I held my breath, squinting into the darkness, trying to make out a shape, a sign of what was creeping closer. My mind raced with questions. What was out there? Was it the creature, or something else entirely? Then, a shadow passed by the crack in the door. It was massive. I could only catch glimpses, but the way it moved reminded me of something almost human, yet so wrong. The figure paused, and I thought it sensed me. Every instinct told me to scream, to run, but my body betrayed me. Just then, a loud crash shattered the silence outside. It sounded like a branch snapped underfoot, and the figure turned sharply, now fully in view. Moonlight illuminated its features, and I felt my heart plummet. It had the face of a wolf, but eyes that burned with an unsettling intelligence. Panic surged within me. I thought of Elias alone somewhere in those woods. I wanted to shout for him, but the words caught in my throat. The wolf-faced figure took a step back, as though it were waiting for something. An unseen presence seemed to hold its attention, and I watched, unsure of what it meant. That's when I saw another figure emerge from the shadows, smaller and stumbling. A sense of recognition rushed over me. It was Elias, his face pale and eyes wide with fear. Relief washed over me, but it was short-lived as the larger creature's gaze shifted towards him. "No," I whispered, desperately wishing I could reach out. Elias seemed unaware of the danger lurking behind him, his eyes scanning the area in confusion. The wolf-like creature crouched down, its eyes gleaming as if it were about to pounce. Time slowed. I could do nothing but watch as Elias started to back away, unknowingly walking straight into its path. "Elias, run!" I finally yelled, my voice piercing the thick air. He whipped around, his eyes meeting mine, and in that split second, I saw understanding dawn on his face. But it was too late. With a swift motion, the beast lunged toward him, but not toward the door I hid behind. Instead, it veered off course, heading into the deeper shadows of the woods. I barely caught a glimpse of Elias as he darted away from the danger. "What the hell?" I muttered, confused. My heart raced not because of the chase, but because I could sense something unfamiliar about the situation. Why hadn't the creature pursued him? It was as if it were toying with us. I needed to act. The pendant tingled in my palm, almost beckoning me to follow and find Elias. But as I stood up from my hiding place, a wave of nausea washed over me, and I staggered back against the crates. There was something in the air, a wrongness that felt magnetic, pulling me like a tide. Forcing control over my trembling limbs, I got ready to leave the shed. But as I approached the door, I realized I could hear the faint calls of something deeper in the woods, mixed with the distant howl that had echoed only moments before. I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this than just a wild animal. I took one last glance around the dim shed, steeling myself for whatever came next. The forest felt alive, the shadows whispering secrets I was desperately unprepared to uncover. And with that, I stepped out into the dark, the darkness of the woods enveloped me like a shroud. I hesitated at the threshold, overwhelmed by a mixture of fear and stubborn determination. I couldn't leave Elias out there alone, not after that close call. The pendant in my hand warmed against my palm, urging me forward. I took a deep breath, stepped out into the night and into the unknown. The air was thick, but it felt different now on the outside. It crackled, buzzing with energy that sliced through my anxiety. I followed the faint sound of Elias's footsteps, the crack of sticks underfoot urging me to move faster. I called out, hoping he was still close enough to hear me. "Elias!" My voice trembled, barely breaking through the rustle of leaves. "Where are you?" Silence settled back in. Just the wind. Panic gripped me again. I felt the weight of it settle in my gut. I pressed forward, scanning the shadows for any sign of movement. The moonlight painted eerie figures onto the ground, and every flicker made me jump. Then I heard it, a low growl creeping through the night. It sent shivers down my spine. I couldn't tell if it was the same creature from before. My instinct screamed at me to run, but I couldn't leave Elias. Rounding the crooked trees, I stumbled upon a clearing bathed in moonlight. It felt like stepping into another world. But my relief vanished when I saw the figure standing at the edge. It was Elias. "Elias!" I shouted again, rushing towards him, yet my heart dropped when I realized something was off. He was staring at the ground, unmoving, his breath shallow. "What's wrong?" I asked as I reached him, my voice barely a whisper. I looked where he was staring, and dread filled my chest. There on the ground was a strange symbol carved into the earth, glowing with a faint blue light. It looked almost like a star or a compass, but twisted, wrong. The drawing felt alive, vibrating with an energy that throbbed in sync with my pendant. I don't know," Elias stammered, his eyes wide with a mix of fear and amazement. "I just found it here. I think it's important." Just then the growling returned, more pronounced this time. I spun around, heart racing. From the darkened tree line, the wolf-faced creature emerged again, but this time it wasn't alone. Shadows shifted in its wake, more figures joining it, more creatures, their features twisted and distorted. "Elias, we need to go, now!" I yelled, grabbing his arm, but he was transfixed by the glowing symbol as if it had a power over him. "Wait!" he protested, shaking his head. "It wants us to stay." "No, it's a trap." I pulled harder. The growl deepened, echoing all around us. I could feel the danger closing in. As I yanked Elias away from the symbol, a surge of energy pulsed from it, knocking us both back. We landed hard on the ground. My head spun, and when I looked up, the creatures were advancing, their eyes glinting like shards of glass. I tried to scramble to my feet. "We can't let them catch us." That's when the pendant around my neck flared brightly, casting a blinding light that held the creatures at bay for just a moment. But we had limited time. "Run, Elias, follow me!" We turned to sprint back into the trees, the chaos of growls and shuffling behind us. For the first time, I felt true terror clawing at my insides. And yet, I couldn't shake the sense that something deeper was at play here, something that was just starting to reveal itself. Before I could grasp what it might be, I broke into the underbrush, dragging Elias with me, pushing forward into the depths of the dark woods, leaving the glowing symbol and its secrets far behind. The branches whipped against my arms as we ran, dragging us back into the shadows. I glanced over my shoulder, half expecting to see the creatures right on our heels, but the light from my pendant shimmered like a shield, momentarily holding them back. "Where do we go?" Elias shouted, his voice cracking with fear. "I don't know," I replied, my lungs burning from the exertion. All I knew was that we had to keep moving. The forest was a maze, its paths twisting unexpectedly. I barely noticed the thorns tearing at my clothes as I pushed deeper. Suddenly, the growling faded. I froze, adrenaline coursing through me as I strained to hear. The silence was thick, almost oppressive. I turned to Elias, who looked just as confused as I felt. "Did we lose them?" I whispered. Before he could answer, a loud crash echoed behind us, followed by frantic rustling. My heart sank. They were still close. I grabbed Elias's arm, pulling him to a fallen log that offered some cover. We crouched low, listening for signs of the creatures while our breaths came in heavy gasps. "We can't stay here long," I said, glancing back at the path we had come from. "They could find us any time." Elias swallowed hard. "What were those things?" "I don't think they were just animals." "I don't know, but we need to get to higher ground," I decided, peeking out from the log. "If we can find a hill, we might be able to see where we're going." As we crawled over the log, a sudden crack caught my attention. I turned to the source of the sound, my body tensing. A shadow flitted between the trees, then disappeared. My stomach knotted. "We aren't alone," I hissed. "Do you think it's them?" Elias whispered, fear making his voice higher. "I think it's something else." I gestured for him to stay back as I cautiously moved towards the noise. Then, just as I reached the edge of the clearing, I spotted it. A figure, hunched low and cloaked in dark fabric. It didn't move like the creatures we'd encountered. A chill ran down my spine. "Elias, stay." I started before the figure turned abruptly. Its eyes were bright, piercing through the gloom, and for a moment, I thought I saw a flash of recognition in those eyes. That's when I saw it. The pendant began to thrum violently against my chest, the energy pulsing with a rhythm that matched my racing heart. I couldn't understand what it meant, only that it was somehow connected to the figure. "Who are you?" I yelled, trying to sound brave. The figure straightened, revealing a face obscured by a hood. "You carry the mark," it said, voice low and almost melodic. "But you must choose your path." "What do you mean?" I asked, panic creeping back in. The figure pointed toward the depths of the forest. "You follow the light, but shadows lurk. You can't run forever. You must embrace what you've found." The warning hung in the air like a threat. I was about to respond when I felt the surge of energy intensify, seeping into the air around us. The woods felt alive with a presence I couldn't comprehend. And then everything went dark. The pendant went cold, and panic set in. "Elias!" I shouted. But there was no answer. My heart pounded as I searched blindly into the black. I stumbled forward, desperation overtaking me. I had to find him. I couldn't let him, or myself, fall victim to whatever was happening in these woods. The splitting branches and rustling leaves filled my ears, but another sound made my blood run cold. The low growl began again. I stumbled through the pitch blackness, clutching the pendant as if it might offer some safety. Shadows swirled around me, and the growling grew louder, more menacing. I called out for Elias, my voice echoing against the trees, but there was only silence in response. It felt as though the forest itself had swallowed him whole, and the realization sent a spike of fear through my heart. Panic clawed at my throat, but I couldn't let it overcome me. I had to think. The figure with the hood had spoken of choices. What path? I barely understood what had happened, and now the urge to run mingled with a strange pull toward the darkness. The same darkness where I felt the creatures watching, waiting. As the growling intensified, a desperate thought crossed my mind. What if Elias was in danger? I couldn't abandon him. The energy from the pendant thrummed against my chest again, almost guiding me. Clenching my jaw, I forced myself forward through the thick underbrush, each twig snapping underfoot a reminder of what was behind me. Then I sensed movement in the shadows ahead. A flicker of something caught my eye and I froze, squinting into the darkness. It was him, Elias. Relief flooded through me as I stumbled toward him, breathless and terrified. He was standing near another tree, his expression a mix of confusion and awe. "Elias," I whispered urgently, grabbing his arm. "We need to get out of here." But he didn't respond. His eyes were locked on something behind me. "It's coming, isn't it?" he murmured, his voice trembling. Before I could answer, the growling crescendoed into a menacing roar. The beasts were close. I felt the vibrations thrum in the ground beneath our feet, and the trees around us seemed to tremble in anticipation. We turned in unison, and there it was, the wolf-like creature emerging from the shadows, its eyes blazing with hunger. It charged toward us, powerful and relentless. "Run!" I shouted, dragging Elias along with me as we bolted back into the maze of trees. We sprinted side by side, branches clawing at us, the forest blurring past in a chaotic rush. Just when I thought we'd gained some distance, I heard it, a shattering howl that echoed between the trees, shaking the ground. The sound was piercing, and I couldn't tell if it was anger or something more primal chasing us. In the flurry of movement, I noticed something gleaming on the forest floor, a shard of glass glimmering faintly in the dark. For a split second I considered stopping, but the growl rang out again, closer this time. We didn't have the luxury of options. The sensation of impending danger surged through me as I rounded a tree and stumbled into a clearing. Bathed in moonlight, the landscape looked almost serene, like a warped reflection of peace. But my heart raced, sensing the push and pull of the shadows around us. "Elias, this way!" I shouted, motioning toward a cluster of boulders that might offer some cover. When we reached them, we ducked behind the nearest rock, panting heavily. I could feel the heat radiating from Elias as he pressed against my side. "What now?" Elias whispered, dread evident in his voice. I closed my eyes, heart pounding as I tried to form a plan. Where was the path once offered? The pendant pulsed against my chest, almost a whisper with every thrum. I needed to embrace whatever this was within me. The forest, the creatures, the very shadows. It was all connected. Before I could voice my thoughts, we heard it again. The growl, now closer, echoing around the clearing. I forced myself to focus. "Wait here," I told Elias, trying to sound confident. I slipped out from behind the boulders with the pendant feeling heavier than before. With the shadows closing in, I looked back into the woods, hoping to find a trace of the creature. The pendant throbbed as if responding to the presence hidden in the darkness. I could sense it, a power pulsing around me, igniting something deep within. Then something caught my eye. The glowing symbol Elias had found earlier. It flickered to life once more, illuminating a path back into the deeper woods. It all made sense in a way that both terrified and exhilarated me. The trees, the creature, the pendant. It was all a test of what lay within. "Elias," I called, waving him over. "This way." He blinked at me, uncertainty flickering in his gaze. "But what if the creature—" "We have to trust that this will lead us to safety. I feel it," I insisted, and without waiting for his hesitation, I dashed toward the symbol's light, urging him on. With every cautious step deeper into the woods, the predator's growl receded as if repelled by the glowing magic. Shadows twisted and writhed around us, but the warmth of the pendant pulsed steadily. It grew stronger with each step, leading us closer to the heart of the forest. "Where's it taking us?" Elias wondered aloud as the light illuminated our path. "I don't know, but wherever it is, it must be important," I replied, the rhythm of our footfalls echoing in the slowly fading darkness. Hope lit a fire within me that pushed through the dread weighing on my chest. We continued further until we reached another clearing. There, standing proud in the moonlight, was an ancient tree gnarled with age, but radiating an energy that embraced us both. The glowing symbol pulsed brightly at its roots, illuminating our surroundings. Elias stepped forward, gazing at the tree in awe. "Is this it?" "I think so," I said softly, feeling the relevance of our discovery wrap around me as the weight of our ordeal hung in the air. There was no sign of the creature now, only this ancient entity before us. But uncertainty gnawed at my mind. The war of shadows might not be over. Then, as if anticipating my dread, a whisper drifted through the air, echoing between the branches. "Elias wants to be found." As the words washed over me, I felt the pendant thrum steadily in my hand, vibrant and alive. Answers were waiting just beneath the surface, just out of reach. We had survived the beasts, but what did it mean? What additional truths lay entwined in this tangled fate? I turned to Elias, seeing the uncertainty mirrored in his gaze. Would we walk away with finality, or would we remain forever woven into the wood's secrets? The future remained ambiguous, and the shadows still lingered, calling out to us. I exchanged a glance with Elias, and in that moment, even amid the lingering worry, I understood our journey was not over. The whispers of the woods were just beginning to unravel.